Mother-in-law betrayal.
Maya couldn't help but smile as she walked into the cozy dining room of her new in-laws' home. The warm smell of roasted vegetables and spices filled the air, and Judith, her mother-in-law, greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome, Maya," Judith said, her voice honeyed but clipped. "David said you'd bring a salad. I hope it's not one of those trendy kale things." Maya's smile faltered for a brief moment before she lifted the dish she'd spent an hour perfecting. "It's a Mediterranean blend," she said, keeping her tone cheerful. Judith murmured, barely glancing at it before returning to the kitchen. It was Maya's third dinner at the house since she and David had married 6 months earlier, and she was determined to make a good impression. Her own family had always been tight-knit, and she'd hoped to build a similar bond with David's. Judith, however, was proving to be a challenge. At first, Maya chalked up Judith's behavior to the typical awkwardness of navigating new family dynamics. But over time, she began to notice patterns. Judith never missed an opportunity to insert a passive-aggressive comment. At one dinner, when Maya brought up her recent promotion, Judith had smiled and said, "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. I hope you don't get too busy to take care of David properly." Another time, when Maya offered to host a family barbecue, Judith had laughed lightly and said, "That's sweet, but hosting takes a lot of experience. Maybe next year." It wasn't just the comments either. Judith had a way of turning every family gathering into a showcase of her closeness with David. She would regale the room with stories from his childhood, often ending with a wistful sigh. "It's hard letting go," she'd say, glancing pointedly at Maya. Early red flags. David, for his part, seemed oblivious to his mother's antics. He adored Maya, but his loyalty to Judith ran deep. "She's just protective," he'd say when Maya voiced her concerns. "She means well. Don't take it personally." Maya tried to take his advice, but it became increasingly difficult to ignore the subtle ways Judith tried to undermine her. For instance, she noticed that Judith often called David during the workday to discuss trivial matters, always phrasing her requests in ways that made Maya seem inattentive. "David, I didn't want to bother Maya about this," Judith would say over the phone. "But my garage door isn't working. Do you think you could come by and take a look?" David, ever the dutiful son, would oblige, leaving Maya to wonder why Judith hadn't simply called a repair service. The tension came to a head during a family game night. Maya had suggested playing a trivia game, excited to share one of her favorite pastimes with the group. Everyone seemed to enjoy it, except Judith. "I don't know why we're playing this," Judith said halfway through. "We always play cards. Isn't that right, David?" David, caught off guard, hesitated before nodding. "We do usually play cards, but this is fun too, Mom." Judith pursed her lips, clearly displeased. "Well, I suppose some traditions just aren't important anymore." Maya swallowed her frustration, but when she and David got home, she finally spoke up. "David, this has to stop. Your mom constantly undermines me, and it's starting to feel intentional." David sighed. "Maya, she's set in her ways. Just give her time." Maya wasn't convinced. Unbeknownst to Maya, Judith had already begun planting seeds of doubt about her in the family. During coffee dates with David's siblings, she made veiled comments about Maya's ambition and modern values. "She's lovely," Judith would say, "but I worry she might not prioritize family the way we do." The final straw came when Maya overheard Judith on the phone with David saying, "I just want to make sure you're happy, sweetheart. You don't want to wake up one day and realize you've made a mistake." Maya's heart sank. Judith wasn't just passively resistant, she was actively trying to sabotage their relationship. As Maya pieced together the extent of Judith's interference, she knew she had to prepare herself for a fight, not to attack Judith, but to defend her marriage and her place in the family. The battle lines were drawn, and Maya wasn't about to back down. The betrayal. The weeks that followed were a test of Maya's patience and resilience. Judith's passive-aggressive comments became more frequent, and the tension between them felt like an ever-present undercurrent. Maya tried her best to focus on her marriage, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Judith's disapproval was creeping into every corner of her life. Her suspicions were confirmed one afternoon when she overheard a conversation between Judith and David on speakerphone. Maya had come home early from work to surprise David with lunch, only to find him on the couch, nodding along as Judith's voice filled the room. "I'm not trying to interfere," Judith said. her tone laced with feigned innocence. I just want to make sure you're really happy. Maya seems distant lately, doesn't she? Maybe she's focusing too much on her career. David shifted uncomfortably. She's been busy, Mom. Work's been demanding. Judith sighed dramatically. I understand, but a marriage needs balance. Don't let her forget that. Maya felt her chest tighten. She didn't interrupt, but the weight of Judith's words lingered long after the call ended. Judith's scheme unfolds. It wasn't just the phone calls. Judith began making subtle but calculated moves to undermine Maya's standing within the family. At a birthday dinner for one of David's siblings, Judith took every opportunity to highlight Maya's shortcomings. Oh, Maya, you didn't bake the cake? Judith asked, her voice dripping with faux surprise. I always thought the wife should handle that kind of thing. Maya bit her tongue, unwilling to escalate the situation in front of the family. But as the night went on, Judith continued to needle her, making comments about Maya's cooking, her work hours, and even her wardrobe. She's just pushing my buttons, Maya told David on the drive home. She's trying to make me look bad in front of everyone. David sighed. Mom's old-fashioned, Maya. She doesn't mean anything by it. Maya clenched her fists in frustration. You can't keep brushing this off, David. She's planting seeds of doubt about me, and I think she's doing it on purpose. Maya's fears were confirmed when a close friend of hers, who had also become friendly with David's sister, relayed something shocking. Judith told your sister-in-law that she's worried about you, her friend said. She implied you're too ambitious and might not want kids, and that it's putting a strain on your marriage. Maya's stomach churned. She had always wanted children, and she and David had already discussed starting a family in the future. The idea that Judith would weaponize such a personal topic left her reeling. The final straw came on an otherwise uneventful Thursday evening. David had been distant all week, and Maya could sense that something was wrong. Over dinner, she finally pressed him. David, is there something you're not telling me? She asked, her voice calm but firm. He hesitated, pushing his food around his plate. Mom mentioned some things, he admitted. She said she's noticed you've been distracted. Maya set her fork down, her appetite gone. Distracted? She thinks you're prioritizing your career over our relationship, David said carefully. She's worried we're not compatible long-term. The words hit Maya like a punch to the gut. And what do you think, David? He looked up, his expression conflicted. I don't know, Maya. You've been so focused on work lately. Maybe she has a point. Maya's voice trembled with controlled anger. Do you really believe that, or is she manipulating you? David didn't answer, but his silence was all the confirmation Maya needed. Judith's seeds of doubt had taken root. Maya's resolve. That night, as David slept, Maya sat in the living room with her laptop. She began documenting every instance of Judith's interference, from the passive-aggressive comments to the rumors she had spread. Maya wasn't about to let Judith ruin her marriage, but confronting her would require more than just words. It would require undeniable proof. She closed her laptop and leaned back, her resolve hardening. Judith had started this battle, but Maya was determined to finish it. Turning the tables, Maya spent the next 2 weeks meticulously gathering evidence of Judith's manipulative behavior. Every comment, every rumor, every subtle act of sabotage was carefully documented. She kept screenshots of messages, notes from conversations, and even recorded a voicemail Judith had accidentally left on David's phone. David, sweetheart, Judith's voice cooed in the recording. I just think you should be careful. Maya's so focused on her career, I'm worried she might forget what really matters. Don't let her put you second, okay? The voicemail was the last piece of the puzzle Maya needed to make her case. The family dinner confrontation. Maya knew she couldn't handle this alone. She reached out to David's sister, Emma, someone she'd always considered a voice of reason in the family. Over coffee, Maya confided in her about Judith's behavior and shared some of the evidence she'd gathered. Emma's face darkened as she listened. I've always known Mom could be overbearing, she said, but this is calculated. We need to address it. Together, they decided the best course of action was a family dinner. Maya was nervous, but with Emma by her side, she felt a flicker of hope. When the night arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. The dining room was filled with the clinking of silverware and small talk. but Maya could feel Judith's eyes on her, studying her every move. After dinner, Emma cleared her throat. "Before we wrap up, I think we need to have a conversation," she said, her voice firm. Judith frowned. "A conversation about what?" Emma looked at Maya, giving her a small nod of encouragement. Maya took a deep breath and stood. "About this," Maya said, pulling out her phone and playing the voicemail Judith had left. The room fell silent as Judith's words echoed through the air. David's face turned pale, his fork frozen midair. "What is this, Mom?" David asked, his voice a mix of confusion and anger. Judith's expression hardened. "David, I was just looking out for you. Someone has to." "By spreading lies about me?" Maya said, her voice steady but sharp. "By questioning my loyalty and trying to sabotage our marriage?" Judith's calm facade cracked under the weight of Maya's evidence. As Maya presented more examples, rumors, comments, and manipulations, Judith became defensive, then angry. "I only did what I thought was best," Judith snapped. "I was protecting my son." "Protecting him from what?" Emma interjected. "A loving wife? A happy marriage? Mom, this isn't protection, it's control." David, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Mom, I trusted you," he said, his voice shaking. "But this is betrayal." Judith's eyes filled with tears. "David, I just didn't want you to make a mistake. I thought I was helping." "No," David said firmly. "You weren't helping. You were tearing us apart." The confrontation marked a turning point. The family, once hesitant to confront Judith, rallied behind Maya. Even those who had initially believed Judith's lies began to see her true colors. Judith, faced with the weight of her actions, stormed out of the room, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. "I'm sorry, Maya," David said after a long pause. "I should have listened to you sooner. I let her manipulate me." Maya placed her hand on his. "We can move forward, David, but only if we're a team." David nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. In the days that followed, Judith's behavior became a topic of family discussion. Emma reached out to other relatives, ensuring everyone knew the truth about what had happened. Slowly but surely, the family began to mend. Judith, meanwhile, found herself increasingly isolated. Her calls to David became less frequent, and when she did reach out, he set firm boundaries. Maya felt a sense of relief for the first time in months. She hadn't just protected her marriage, she'd shown herself that she was capable of standing up for what she deserved. Justice and closure. In the weeks following the explosive family dinner, the ripple effects of the confrontation were felt throughout the family. Judith had gone unchallenged for years, her controlling behavior cloaked under the guise of maternal care. But now, with her actions exposed, she found herself facing the consequences of her manipulation. At first, Judith tried to maintain her usual routine, calling David daily and attempting to regain control of the narrative. "I was only trying to help you, David," she said during one call. "You know how much I care about your happiness." But David was no longer the eager-to-please son who hung on her every word. "Mom," he said firmly, "I've set boundaries and I need you to respect them. Maya and I are focusing on our marriage and your interference isn't welcome." The sting in his words was evident, and Judith began to realize that her influence was waning. Calls to other family members were met with similar resistance. Emma, in particular, was quick to shut down Judith's attempts to shift blame. "Mom, you need to reflect on your actions," Emma said. "This isn't about Maya or David. This is about you and your inability to let go." Judith's world, once carefully constructed around her control, was starting to crumble. For David and Maya, the weeks following the confrontation were filled with honest conversations and quiet healing. David apologized repeatedly for his role in enabling Judith's behavior, and Maya, though still hurt, chose to forgive him. "I didn't want to believe my mom could act like that," David admitted one night as they sat on the couch. "But you've shown me what real love and loyalty look like, and I'm sorry I let her come between us." Maya placed her hand over his. "We've been through a lot, David, but I believe we can come out stronger on the other side." The couple began prioritizing their relationship in new ways, from scheduling regular date nights to attending a marriage workshop together. Slowly, the tension that had plagued their home lifted, replaced by a renewed sense of partnership. One rainy afternoon, Judith appeared on their doorstep, her usual polished appearance replaced by a more subdued demeanor. She clutched an umbrella in one hand and a small bouquet of flowers in the other. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Judith began, her voice softer than Maya had ever heard it. "I realize now that I let my fears cloud my judgment. I'm sorry for how I treated you, Maya, and I'm sorry for the strain I caused in your marriage." Maya looked at David, who nodded. "We appreciate your apology, Mom," he said. "But rebuilding trust takes time. You'll need to show us that you're willing to change." Judith's shoulders slumped, but she nodded. "I understand," she said quietly. Over the next few months, Judith made small efforts to mend her relationships. She sent thoughtful notes to David and Maya and attended family gatherings without causing drama. Though she was far from perfect, her willingness to take responsibility for her actions was a step in the right direction. Maya, for her part, maintained her boundaries. She had learned that standing up for herself didn't mean holding on to resentment. It meant knowing her worth and refusing to let anyone undermine it. A new chapter. On their first wedding anniversary, David surprised Maya with a handwritten letter. In it, he expressed his gratitude for her strength, patience, and love. "You've taught me what it means to truly fight for something," the letter read, "and I promise to keep fighting for us every day." As Maya folded the letter and placed it in her keepsake box, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. Judith's betrayal had tested them, but it had also made them stronger. Together, Maya and David had reclaimed their marriage and built a foundation that no amount of interference could shake.